Senator Rubio and his reference to you, Senator Lugar, except since we're both in high school at the same time, I didn't get that message. But you've done a wonderful job for a lot of years, and we respect you. Both Senator Corker and Senator Rubio talked about some of the events leading up to the disaster. However, they assumed, I guess, that everyone already knew, and I think it's imperative for us to put these things in the record so that we know what signs were out there. I'm referring to the one sentence on the report that says the board found that intelligence provided no immediate specific tactical warning of the September 11 attacks. We'll run over some of these things and then ask you both if you agree with that statement. If it's more than a yes or no answer, you can do it for the record. In April, 2 former security guards for the consulate in Benghazi threw IEDs over the consulate fence. In May, the offices of the Red Cross in Benghazi were hit by an RPG, and the Red Cross closed their doors and they got out of town. In June, militants detonated an explosive at the perimeter gate of the Benghazi consulate, blowing a hole through it large enough for 40 people to go through. In June, a rocket-propelled grenade hit the convoy carrying the British ambassador to Libya in Benghazi, and they, like the Red Cross, got out of town. They left. In June, Ambassador Stevens wrote that the al-Qaeda flags were flying over the government buildings and training facilities in that area. In August, security officers stated that they did not believe Benghazi consulate could withstand a, quote, coordinated attack. That was in August. In August, the State Department cable, we're talking about cables now, information that came to you folks, discussed the location of approximately 10 Islamist militias and al-Qaeda training camps within Benghazi. On September the 4th, Ambassador Stevens warned that Libyan officials had introduced a state of maximum alert in Benghazi. And then finally, on September 9th, Ambassador Stevens requested additional security 2 days before it happened. Like the rest of the members of this panel, I knew him quite well, and I had a great deal of respect for him. Now, in light of all these findings, these are facts that no one has argued with. Do you, either one of you want to say that you agree with the statement that I read first in the report, saying that there are no warnings?
Well, Senator, the statement in the report that says that there was no specific tactical threat, I think, is a statement of fact. But you're right to point out the pattern, the troubling pattern of deteriorating security in eastern Libya in each of the incidents that you discussed. The reality is that amongst that deterioration, or part of that deterioration, was a lot of intra-Libyan violence as well. Some of it was targeted against the United States. We did not do a good enough job, as the report highlights, in trying to connect the dots between that troubling pattern, even in the absence of an immediate tactical threat.
Mr. Secretary Nides, I'll assume that you pretty much agree with this, the statement he made. Now, there isn't time to go into it, but for the record, if you would please respond, I would appreciate it very much.
Yes, I do.
Later date.
Yes, I do.
Then there are 2 questions. One, not so significant. It is pretty obvious. And the other is the most significant question that isn't asked, it's not covered in the report, that I'd like to get your response to. The first is, were the comments of Ambassador Rice completely inaccurate regarding her assertion on 5 TV shows 5 days after the event, with the video responsible for the deaths of the Ambassador Stevens and 3 other Americans? And the second question, this is the one that's important because we all knew, we had testimony, and I'll read the testimony of the CIA before the House. They said, although intelligence community knew from day one that al-Qaeda terrorists were responsible for a deadly Benghazi consulate attack, someone cut reference to al-Qaeda and terrorism from the overview they released on September the 14th instead of those talking points they added. Now, somebody in the White House, because this report went to the Situation Room, Someone in the White House changed the talking points from General Petraeus and the CIA before they were given to Ambassador Rice. I assume that they were changed and that she was not aware of it, or she was aware. That's not too pertinent. Someone changed it. Do either one of you guys know? Do you care?
Right. Senator, here's what I would say. What happened in Benghazi was clearly a terrorist attack. Secretary Clinton, on the day after the attack, said quite directly that what happened in Benghazi was an assault by heavily armed militants on our compound. Later that same day, President Obama spoke to an act of terror. What was not clear at that time was exactly which terrorists were involved, what their motives were, exactly how this came about, whether this had been planned well in advance or was more a target of opportunity. And I'm convinced, Senator, that my colleagues in the administration who addressed this issue and the intelligence professionals on whom they relied operated in good faith. Their focus was on being as factual as possible, and their focus was on action. And you have to remember, sir, at this time there were mobs coming over the walls of our embassies in Cairo, in Tunis, and Sana'a, and that was what people were focused on. And so the initial inaccuracies, because just as the ARB report points out, there were no protests before the attack took place. It took several days for the intelligence community to conclude definitively that there weren't any protests and that there weren't any demonstrations.
Let me respond to that because we're running out of time, and I want to give the Secretary Knights an opportunity to respond.
Well, we've actually run out of time.
Well, I know others did too. Specifically, the report from CIA references Al-Qaeda and terrorism. That's specific. It can't get any more specific than that. So I'll get your response. If you have time, if you'll give Mr. Knights time to respond, that's fine. If not, you can do it for the record.
No, I want him to do it quick. I'm trying to honor other senators who want to get to the Inhofe ceremony, but I think we have time. If you could do it quickly.
No, I concur with Secretary Burns' comments, and I do think that the interagency was operating in good faith. As someone who was in the room during those 3 days with Secretary Clinton, our full and complete focus was on saving lives. Sitting there with her as she made calls to leaders of all those countries where our men and women were in danger. That was what our focus was, and that is what we spent our time and energies on.
And you don't know who changed the talking point?
I do not. This was a interagency process. I'm not aware of how that occurred. It was an interagency process.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator, we'd be happy to help you follow up to get that pinned down.
Sure.
I think there is actually some testimony with respect to that within the Intel community, within the Intel committee. Senator